Hello, welcome to Coffee Break with Kardec. And today we'll be seeing the ideas about God and the possible answer to the question that Kardec has posed to the spirits: what is God? But before we do that, let's understand how the book of Genesis, the miracles and predictions according to Spiritism, was structured there back in 1868. And it starts talking about God, the essence of God, and of course the attributes of God. We can't understand God in depth because we still lack the means to do so. However, we can look at the attributes of God, which will be seen sometime in the future, and then looking at these attributes, then can understand the creation, which is, at the end of the day, it's the purpose of our researches and, of course, the book Genesis. And then Kardec moves, following that, he moves into the organic Genesis, the formation of the material world, spiritual Genesis, and so on. And the important thing is, although the book was written in 1868, he talks about some aspects. He presents the idea of God and the attributes of God at the background of anything that happens in the universe, material and physical. And that's why it gives us insight. Nowadays, from the 1940s, 1950s, I would say, onwards, we start to have a science called astrobiology. So basically what astrobiology tries to explain is the origin of life, what life really is, what it represents, and it tries to trace life back to the creation of the known, the material universe. So the beginning of a matter, the first particles, then the first atoms, and then molecules, and so on. And the particularities of what we call life. And it's very interesting because Genesis, according to this modern view in astrobiology and the research that is done in astrobiology, with the idea of the book Genesis and the concepts that Kardec presents us as part of the information brought by the spirits, he helps us create an understanding and then show through our research in our laboratories the actual origin of life. We've seen that there's a great evolution has happened since Kardec's time. As we've mentioned before in one of our previous coffee breaks, that this is actually moving. We are going into the depths of what we call matter, but also we are moving into the depths of the space of the universe, open universe. And then we are trying to find answers. And then as we are going to see, this is part of our quest to, I would say, to understand the creation, and consequently, we find the creator behind the creation. Just like by analyzing a very complex mechanism of a clock, we then slowly get the understanding of the mind that conceived and created that clock and is the clock maker. We can say that God is the clock maker of the universe, and the universe is his clock. And when I say universe, I'm not talking just about the physical universe, but also bearing in mind the spiritual universe that the spirits presented to us as a way for us to look at matter in our daily life in our laboratories, and also try to see with these new lenses that they bring, which is that the material universe is just a limited edition, just a limited small part of a much broader universe. And the book Genesis, in the following chapters, as I said, organic creation, organic universe, the material universe, and then the spiritual Genesis, the spiritual universe, and that they are all together is fascinating. So we're talking about God and the idea of God that we have. We know that since humankind has been here on Earth, arrived here, a long time ago, we've also had this inner perception of God. I wouldn't say idea, because for us, everything that would go beyond our control was attributed to a superior being, a superior me, superior human being, a stronger, brighter human being that would control that. And that's why primitive people used to say that there was a god of thunder, and then a god of the rain, and a god of this, of that, because they couldn't control those phenomena. And because they couldn't control those phenomena, they said it goes beyond my capacity, so there is a superior being in charge of that. So we know from history of religion, we know that this idea of God, many gods initially, and then in Judaism, we came to the idea of just one God, because then we perceived that certain things couldn't be divided into different gods for each one of them to look after one aspect. We know about the Greek mythology, the many gods and their relationship, sometimes very difficult. And we actually project us, we give us special attributes, and then we call God. So since the very beginning, our understanding of God is based on the understanding of us and what we are doing here. So as we evolved, as we started to understand the physical world around us and create new ideas, develop ourselves intellectually and morally, our perception of the surrounding changes, and also idea of God. So God started to become more specialized, because we understand how thunder appear in the atmosphere through physics, chemistry. We can explain so many things, biology, and all the sciences that we have. We can explain them. So we took those attributes from God, but then we started to understand the laws behind all that. So all that happened according to laws, and not because there was a human-like with the special gifts being in control of that. And also what we see is that in the development of humankind, of our civilizations, we've seen that as we evolved, we started to move from small villages, small clans, tribes, where in the moral aspect, we had control of what was going on. So if someone misbehaved, all the community would know, all the community would take some actions according to this or that misbehavior. But as we started to live in larger groups, we started to lose this control. Imagine now in a big city like London or New York, if we can actually control, people's behavior. So God started to receive, or our perception of God, the attribute we gave to God was actually the one who was controlling our moral behavior, because we ourselves couldn't control the behavior of a large community. We started to attribute that to God, and then through fear, through punishment, and all that we know, we would control, saying that, well, if you misbehave now, it's not me. We have our laws, of course, but you may not be caught by our laws, but God knows everything that you do. He will punish. So it's a very vengeful picture of God, and a God that is still very human. And then, being human, he would behave like a human with superpowers, as it were, knowing everything everywhere and then punishing. As it was one of us who was actually very upset with something, very annoyed with someone, and so this was a perception of God in large communities. But we've seen also that in the Aztecs, for instance, Incas in Central America, and they had a different, and in many tribes scattered around the world, they had the perception that God was in control of every natural phenomenon. And because of that, when everything went wrong, flooding and drought and all these natural cycles that we go through, and we had to offer a sacrifice because God was angry. So, so they had this different. They wasn't too much concerned with the moral aspect and the moral control of this divine being, but actually the physical control of the environment, and he would punish a group of people according to the way they behaved or the way they looked after, or sometimes for no reason whatsoever. Then they would say God is angry, so we have to offer a sacrifice so that God will calm down. If a volcano erupted, that it was because God was upset with something. So they had to offer sacrifice. So we see that we actually project outside of us and give these attributes of these deities or superior beings, a god or gods, the perception that we create inside us. So with these ideas that the Spirit brought to us about a different God, and they started, giving us an idea of a God that is not anthropomorphic. He hasn't got, God has our form, our behavior, our way of thinking. Is not a human being with superpowers. God is something that we can't understand. We have no intellectual and no moral elements to understand what God is. As if, if we were blind, all of us never saw the beautiful colors of the visible light, we wouldn't understand what seeing means, what colors mean. And so we have to develop this perception so that we can understand what it is. So someone could describe some of these phenomena to us, but we would create a vague and not very realistic picture of what it represented according to our experiences. And we do the same with God. We have no perception, no conditions actually to perceive in depth what God is. But we can have an idea, and as we progress, the same way that we move from a God that controls thunder, and then we have to offer a sacrifice, or that God will punish us according to our moral behavior. And this is changing. Also, the perception of God as we develop our sciences. We study our physical world through our sciences, all our sciences, and also develop ourselves through our philosophical views of life and our moral codes that we ourselves established as the normal codes of behavior. So as we do that, our perception changes. And that's why Kardec asked the spirits not who God is, because then he was implying God was a person. So he left it open for the spirits to give the answer. And the answer that the spirits gave to us was God is the supreme intelligence, first thing of all, first cause of all things, meaning that God is behind everything in the creation, everything. Be we aware of that, be we unaware of that, but God is behind all that. And then we are going to see also in the future, because we are running out of time, running out of coffee, and we'll see the attributes of God. The attributes of God. By understanding the attributes of God, that we grasp from the understanding of the world around us, and I mean physical world and the spiritual world, thanks to the movement in the spiritual world to bring to us this information. Otherwise, it would take us a long time until we manage to get this exist. So all these combined will help us understand the attributes of God and understand that there isn't a cause, and from a cause that we know, we can go back, from an effect, we can go back to the cause. The same way that if we see an intelligent effect, we can then think that almost certainly that there is an intelligent cause. And moving this way, slowly we develop our faculties and we broaden our understanding of God until the day we have this full picture. Well, that's what we had for our coffee break today. I hope to see you next week in another coffee break with Kardec. Thank you.